Question. Hello, Kim. I feel like this is my last lifetime and that I'm going to ascend after this. I started feeling this way before I found your videos and the Ascended Master's teachings. There is just an intuitive sense that I've been on this path for a very long time and that I'm nearing completion of the lessons I've come here to learn. I wanted to ask, how do you know you will ascend after this life? I'm still learning and clearing things, but it has become so effortless and natural. Well, there really isn't anything to say. I mean, you're perfectly right in what you're saying. It is just an intuitive sense. That's the only way to know. I mean, you can always say that you need to have a certain foundation for your intuitive insights, in the sense that I have this model I always talk about, that we live in the material world, which is a certain spectrum of energetic frequencies. And beyond that is a level of higher frequencies, which is the spiritual realm. So in the spiritual realm is our higher self and our ascended teachers. And so you can say that the higher self and your ascended teachers, let's say they're seeking to give you a message that you can ascend after this lifetime. But if you don't in your outer mind have the concept of ascension, how can you receive the message? So what I'm trying to say is that intuition doesn't really exist in a vacuum. Intuition is very much linked to what you know in your outer mind, your rational mind, just your knowledge of life and the spiritual path. I mean, if I had not heard about Ascended Masters and the process of the ascension, how could my intuition have told me that I was ready to ascend? That's what I'm trying to say. So, so what I'm saying is, this person is saying, I started feeling this way before I found your videos and the Ascended Master's teachings. Yes, but you must still have had some concept that you have, that, for example, you have incarnated many times on Earth, and that it's possible to come to a point where you don't have to incarnate again, whether you call it the ascension or something else. So that's why all I'm trying to say is, how do you know? Well, you have to have the concepts in your outer mind, and then at a certain point you can receive an intuitive prompting from your higher self and your spiritual teachers. For me, as I said, I found Ascended Master teachings in early 1980s, really went into it in 1984. And so from that moment on, I had the concept of the ascension, that it's possible to ascend. But it was really not until the early 2000s that I had this intuitive sense, oh, you qualified for your ascension. And it just came to me, sort of. I hadn't thought about it, because, and what I'm trying to get to with this is, you have to have certain concepts that your intuition can work with. But you also have to be in a neutral state of mind. Because, so what we could say is, the concepts are the foundation for getting an intuitive insight. But the concepts can also block your intuitive insights. And here's what I mean with that. I have seen Ascended Master students who were, with the outer mind, very focused on qualifying for their ascension. Very, you might even say, obsessive compulsive about qualifying for their ascension. Let's take, again, I'm not trying to put anything down here, but my introduction to Ascended Masters was in an organization called the Summit Lighthouse. And in the Summit Lighthouse, the main focus in terms of making your ascension was really balancing karma. So the idea was, we had a certain amount of karma from past lives, and in order to qualify for our ascension, we had to balance at least 51% of our karma. There was a dispensation that was given that you didn't have to balance 100% before you could ascend. You could balance 51%, then ascend, and then work out the rest from the ascended level. That was how it was said. And there was a point in the early 1990s where Elizabeth Care Prophet started at public services telling certain people how big of a percentage of their karma they had balanced. And she would also talk about sometimes people who had passed from the screen of life, how much they had balanced and whether they had qualified for their ascension or not. And it was done in a sense to encourage people. But there were also people that became obsessed with that, really wanting to know, and using various means, going to psychics or muscle testing or this or that, to determine how much karma they had balanced. And what I'm saying is, this can become an obsession that blocks your real intuition, because you can actually get a false intuition. So it's important, and the person, I think, describes this, that he just started feeling this way spontaneously. And the same thing happened to me in a sense that I had, of course, the concepts of the ascension, but I wasn't really obsessed about it. I wasn't really thinking about it. So it was just one day, just really out of the blue. I hadn't really thought about it. All of a sudden, I just had this inner prompting. Oh, you qualified for your ascension. And it was not a big deal for me. It was just, it was good to know. It gave me a certain sense of peace to know that I had qualified. But it wasn't a big deal. It was not something I immediately went out and told everybody. And so what I'm saying is, you have to have a foundation, you have to have the concept of the ascension, and you have to have the concept that there are certain requirements. Now, as I've talked about in many videos, the way it was said in the Summit Lighthouse, you just have to balance 51% of your karma. That's really not the full story of the ascension, because, as I've said, you have to resolve enough of these subconscious selves that you're not attached to anything on earth. I mean, the ascension is really it's a absolutely drastic final step. When you ascend from earth, you are leaving the earth behind for good. I mean, permanently. There's no going back here. And in the Summit Lighthouse, it was almost like, you're walking the spiritual path, you're studying the teachings, you're giving the decrees, and as a result of this almost mechanical process, you're balancing karma. And one day you will have balanced enough karma, and then you'll just poof, you'll be up there. But what I realized actually many years ago is that in order to ascend, you have to make one final choice. You have to look back at the earth, and if there's anything here that you feel isn't finished, anything you want to do, anything you want to experience, you cannot leave the earth behind for good. You have to come back until you have finished what you haven't finished. Because ascension means you can look back at earth and you can be totally at peace and say, I can leave the earth behind, never to come back here. And so that requires a certain resolution of psychology. And that's why I'm saying, if you look at the ascension as an outer goal, then your ego is going to start using that to project all kinds of things upon it. And then you won't get the true intuition. So it requires a certain resolution of psychology, which it sounds like the person asking the question has achieved, either in this lifetime or past lifetimes, before you have that inner peace where you can say, I'm done. There's nothing I need to do, want to do, have to do. I can move on. And so what I would say here is that if you can recognize that you have a certain obsession in your outer mind with this will block your intuition. When we can get to that point where you're neutral about it, you're not really overly concerned about whether you're qualified for your ascension or not, then you can get to that point where you've resolved enough psychology that you can get that intuitive clarity that, yes, I qualified. Now, I would say, as I said, I can't remember the exact date or year, but it was in the early 2000s I got this inner prompting. And since then, I've done a lot of work on my psychology. I didn't assume that, oh, I qualified my ascension, I don't need to look at my psychology anymore. I did not make that assumption, and I have gone through a lot of psychology since then, which means that I'm now much more free to ascend than I was before. Because, see, what I said about the Summit Lighthouse, it was said there's a dispensation that was given that you could ascend with 49% of your karma balanced. And Mother Mary, through me, a number of years ago, explained that this is because the 49% you have to, or the 51% you have to balance before you can ascend, is what you have with other people. And the 49% is what you have with yourself. And the karma you have with yourself is your unresolved psychology, meaning these subconscious selves that you created in the identity, mental, and emotional level. And you can work these out without being in physical embodiment. But it's much easier to work them out while you're in physical embodiment. And that's why my goal is clearly to keep working on my psychology as long as I'm in embodiment, or until I get some intuitive prompting that there is nothing to work on. But I actually don't foresee that happening, because I said there are illusions all the way up to the 144th level. So, because I want to balance or resolve as much psychology as I can while I'm in physical embodiment, so that when my body is ready to draw its last breath, I'm as close to the 100% balanced point as I can be.